Okay, wonderful. So if you have any questions, there are a couple of questions that were sent to me. I posted them in the chat, the group chat. But if there are any questions that you have right now, we could go into that. Okay. So if you have any questions. Hello, Rhonda. Rhonda, you're right. Would you say that experience is not real because it is changing all the time? You know, in the teaching, Rhonda, in Advaita, we refer to the changeless, and we refer to the changing. These are pedagogical tools. So the changeless is consciousness, awareness, and the changing are what appears, is the appearance. In fact, initially, we believe that reality is an objective reality. The reality is what we perceive. The tree is what's real, the car, the people. This is what the belief is, that what appears is what's real. And consciousness is just something mysterious there that is more in the conceptual realm, or in a different realm than the physical reality. This is what our initial belief is. But when we contemplate that reality that keeps changing, a reality that's changing, that's not the reality. The reality has to be sort of permanent, eternal, across time and space. So then we come to the understanding that reality is not something that appears, because whatever appears has a beginning and an end. It exists in time. So once we come to that understanding, our interest and our belief in a physical reality quiets down and returns to the source. We return to the understanding of the formless, the changeless, the infinite, invisible, the reality of consciousness. That's an important understanding. But that is not the final understanding, Rhonda, because there is a further understanding beyond that. The understanding that is beyond that is that whatever appears is at zero distance from the consciousness out of which it appears and as which it appears. In other words, what perceives the appearance, meaning consciousness, is at zero distance from what is perceived. When we come to this understanding, just taking care of something here. Okay. Once we come to this understanding, then we realize that both the appearances and consciousness are one. The reality of what appears, is consciousness. And although what appears and disappears is not eternal, its substance, its reality is eternal. Now, what really matters in your contemplation is for the impression of separation to return to its source, to dissolve in its source. Because the unhappiness that you experience in your life, that we all experience in our life, is due to this sense of me, this sense of a separate self. That's a movement away from the wholeness. When we separate ourselves, we're separating ourselves from the wholeness. And we experience the angst of personhood, of isolation, the sense of lack, the hope for a better tomorrow, the regrets about yesterday's behaviors, yesterday's actions. We have a list of demands and requests from God to come and fulfill our personal happiness. And that entire realm is unhappy. So it is important to realize that your experience, before it gets separated into a me and the world, your experience is that of wholeness, is an experience of totality. It's an experience that is not divisible, not divided into internal and external. There is no separate power. Realities, the inner reality and the outer reality. It is all one reality. So the teaching that says that what appears is not real is just a pointer to bring you to turn your attention to consciousness, which is the reality of your experience, that does not come and go, that is not affected by what appears, that doesn't give a hoot about what appears, that is completely free, is not dependent on any appearance, on any experience, on any comings and goings. You're right around that. Perceiving and experiencing, are they the same? You could say that, yes. What's important in your question about perceiving and experiencing is to realize that all perceptions are God's perceptions. All experiences are God's experiences. They are not yours as a person. They're not yours as a man or a woman, a mother, a sister, a daughter, a father. They're divine experiences. They're God's experiences. So, yes, experiencing and perceiving are one, because there's only one reality. Whatever the reality of perceiving is, it is God. And whatever the reality of experiencing is God. So there is one reality, which is the reality of God. And it is God that perceives and that experiences. There is no other experiencer and no other perceiver. Zoe, I just saw your question, and I will address it in just a minute. So, Randa, you're right. So liberation is not an experience. No. Liberation, just to be clear, I usually don't use the term liberation, because it feels like somebody is in a jail cell or something like that. It needs to be liberated. But the revelation of our true nature is not an experience in time and space. But it is not just a mental understanding. It is the dissolution of the separation, of the impression of separation. It is the forgetting this separate me concept, this separate reality belief, forgetting it drops, it dissolves. And what remains is the divine reality, the wholeness of consciousness, which is not a person, is not an event, is not an experience in time and space. So the realization of the self, you can call it as pure bliss, pure happiness, pure peace, the absolute resting as the self, as God consciousness. So no, it's not an experience in time and space. It is the reality of what you are, the reality of everything, your reality and the reality of everything. Randa, you ask, how does it dissolve? Is it constant knowing of true nature? Ignorance, meaning the sense of separation, dissolves in your love of truth, your love for truth, your complete absorption, your complete passion for truth, for the revelation of what is real, for the revelation of the divine reality. Your love and your passion dissolves ignorance. If you maintain your interest in experiences, in your body, in your mind, in your work, in your children, in your mother, and if you maintain your interest in the world will sap all your energy. It will take all your attention, and it will keep telling you, oh, now you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to fix this, you need to fix that, in order for you to be happy. So the dissolution of ignorance requires a passion for truth, a dedication, dedicating your life, dedicating all of yourself to come to this revelation. Otherwise, you will continue to spin and spin and spin, and you will come back in 1,000 years with the same questions, with the same feelings, with the same emotions, with the same situation. Once you hear the message and you get a feeling, a sense of that message, the message being pointing to the non-physical reality, to the formless reality of God, of the self, of consciousness, the reality of consciousness, the reality of what I am. Once you hear this message and it resonates, you have to hold on to that understanding and continue to contemplate and explore that understanding in whichever way you can, without resting at any halfway point, without compromising yourself, because there is nobody that you can cheat except yourself. You can fool nobody except yourself. But you don't need to fool yourself. You just go straight into God's arms, which means that your belief in your personhood as a separate being, that is contrary, is contradictory to the divine wholeness of consciousness. Consciousness is undividable and undivided. So you continue to contemplate your questions, ask your questions, keep probing. Rhonda, you're right, thank you. There is nothing in the world of images that is permanent, and I know it can deliver. Yes, yes. You know that, that's good. Now, turn your attention to what does not come and go in your experience. The formless self, the formless consciousness, right now in this very moment, the reality that perceives. It is God that perceives, God's presence, God's reality. Remain as that. Keep turning your attention to that. Recognize that to be your very self. God's grace shining through you. Okay, Rhonda. Oops. Let me see. There was a question from Zoey, but I don't seem to have copied it correctly. Let me see if I can go back to it. Okay. Let's see. Oops. I don't know why I'm unable to doing something wrong here. Let me do it one more time. Okay. So we come here, and there it is. Okay, let me see. And then I paste it here. Okay, well, I'm just going to read the question. I can't understand why I'm unable to copy it, but so Zoe, you ask, are spiritual power places real? Why do some teachers talk of this? Example, how Ramana Maharshi was drawn to Arunachala as the embodiment of Shiva or God. How can the self be more in one place than another? Yes, Zoe, the self is everywhere and everything. Wherever you gather in my name, here I am. Yes, Ananda, is that the saying? Wherever two or more gather in my name.
There am I in the midst of them.
There I am in the midst of them. Thank you, Ananda. Yes. So the holy place, Zoe, is wherever you gather in God's name, in thy name. That is the holy place. You do not need to travel anywhere, to go anywhere, to any holy places. The holy place is whenever you turn your attention to the reality, to truth, to the causeless peace. That is the holy non-place. Keep in mind, Zoe, that places are mind stuff. The divine place is not a non-place, it's not a place. Beyond is a different realm than the realm of places, of Arunachala or Mount Shasta or other Arizona, what is it? Some places out there, Sedona, etc. This is not that realm. Love for God and love for truth is a different realm than the physical realm, than the realm that appears, than what is perceived. And that realm is within you. So Arunachala, Mount Shasta, other holy places, Sedona, etc., are within you. I remember years ago when I was upstate New York, I lived in a town called Troy, New York. I was going to the university. And God appeared to me. And I was in complete absorption and contemplation. It was a very holy place. I felt a holiness that is beyond any doubt. It was a holy place. So you could say that Troy, New York is a holy place. So that's my answer to you on the absolute level, which is really the only real level that really matters. On the relative level, whenever there is a sage, now a sage is a complete revelation of the self, the Sahaja Samadhi. Whenever there is a realization, a full realization of the self, is a holy place. In the old days, the sages, the real sages, they were somewhere out in the mountain, in a cabin or in a cave or in a small village somewhere in a hut. It was a different lifestyle than today, of course. And somehow, truth lovers, students who were keen on the revelation of the self, they managed to find them. They sensed where they were. Something drew them. Like the first patriarch, he found Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma was sitting in some hut or some cave up in the mountains. He somehow found him. He went through great difficulties. A very difficult journey, not like today where it's so easy to travel from place to place. And he would not leave, although Bodhidharma told him, I have nothing to teach you. Go somewhere else. Go find somebody else. He wouldn't leave. He knew in his heart that that was a holy place. And the place was holy because of Bodhidharma's Sahaja Samadhi, his shining light of the Samadhi. Now, there may be places where you feel drawn. Not drawn at the mind level, something resonates within your heart. So that calling, that resonance, is a whisper calling your attention in that direction. This may be your holy place to explore. But the true exploration is not in time and space. It pierces through time and space. It defies the relative realm. It cuts right through it, like Manjusri's sword, cuts right through the veil of duality. The self is the one reality, and is not more real in one place than in any other place. I know that a lot of people feel otherwise. Even some teachers, it's okay. Just sharing with you just this. So, first of all, journey to the holy place that's within you, that you are. Because in fact, there is no within or without. There is no inside and outside. That's the conceptual realm. There is just the seamlessness of being. That's what you journey to. And as you journey to the wholeness of being, you realize that you are journeying from the wholeness of being, because you are that. And you find that it's a journey that takes no time and no space, because you're journeying from God to God, from truth to truth. But in order to undertake this journey, you cannot have any personal ambition, because a personal ambition is contradictory to the wholeness. It divides the wholeness, it pulls out of the wholeness segments and parts, it robs the wholeness and introduces the me and mine, my experiences, my journey. But it is not so. It is thine, thy journey, God's journey. It's not your personal journey. It is God's journey. But God does not journey. God is. So the journey is completed even before its inception, even before its beginning. It is done. It is completed. Because God takes no steps, no step. Because God is isness. Isness, beingness. Beingness is not subject to time and space. It is the eternal truth. So it's actually a no journey. It's a no journey. So you cannot say, oh, okay, if then it's a no journey, then I am that. You can only say I am that when your love for truth delivers. And it delivers by delivering you from this impression that you are a man or a woman, a separate self. There's no peace that can come upon you that is out of the man's realm, the human realm. Peace can only come to you via God's realm, the absolute realm. That has no opposite. It does not know good or evil. It is the absolute self. I remember years ago going to retreats. There were the Zen type of retreats in Zen centers. In particular, I was going to the Rochester Zen Center and Springwater Center of Meditative Inquiry. That was years ago. But I recall at the time when I entered the Zendo, the sitting room, feeling this deep stillness. So you could say that was a holy place. But then I recognized that this deep stillness was within me. And then this deep stillness that was in the Zendo became the deep stillness that I am. And so I became the Zendo. I became the holy place. Not as a man, not as a person, not as an ego. I really use the term ego, but I just used it. But as just the holiness, the wholeness. But if you find yourself drawn along your journey to places that are resonating for you, you can explore these places. But keep in mind that what you are looking for is beyond all that. Thank you for your question, Zoe. Let me know if there is something you wanted to follow up with that. Hello, Ananda. You right? I have had the opportunity to be in satsang situations much of my life. Being with Jean Klein a fair amount is a great example of this. I have been effortlessly happy in these situations. It's very beautiful, yes. Similar unmistakable beauty, beneficence, clarity has come at other times, often when alone in nature. I wonder how you would compare the effects of a wonderful natural environment and that of a satsang with a human friend. What you've just been talking about is very similar to what I'm asking about. Yes, Ananda. At the core, when you are in nature and you are feeling the peace, meaning you're not spinning in thoughts about me and what I'm doing and yesterday, oh, this is beautiful, that this and that. And when you are enjoying nature as this wonderful manifestation of the infinite invisible, you are in God's garden. You're sipping a very delicious cup of tea with a good friend.
Yes.
You are at peace and happy. Now, in satsang, you have the same experience where you experience the peace and the happiness, causeless peace and happiness. It is similar to being in nature where the mind is still and quiet. But also in satsang, there are below the radar teachings that shift your understanding in ways that you may realize during satsang, but mostly you realize them in your life after satsang. That is not usually the experience when you are in nature, except of course when you are in nature and you are also conducting your own satsang. Because satsang is in a way, yes, with the teacher, but also satsang is with the self. You can be in the forest conducting your own satsang with the self. because the self may appear as a teacher, as a friend, but also appears as not a person, can appear just as the wisdom of the self, as the contemplation of the self. But when you are in satsang, and a satsang that where you are with somebody who is established as the self, then for sure you are hearing at one level or the other God's voice, whether you are aware of it at the surface of your mind or below the radar. And this teaching in satsang bears fruit, not necessarily immediately, but down the line, depending, of course, on your interest and your receptivity and your openness and your love. That is the ground and the fertilizer and the light that allows these teachings to flourish.
You know, the time I spent with John Klein, I had an unmistakable resonance, and it seemed that it was some of the being with him and what he had to say and everything resonated at the deepest level of experience I ever had, you might say. So based on is it echoing?
No.
Sorry. Based on certain experience, well, maybe I'm even imagining that it was based on a particular experience. It just was there, that resonance. But I really didn't understand, even though I had read already, Bankai and Huang Po and, very sophisticated stuff. I didn't really Advaita, the non-duality concepts and stuff as well. I mean, I was aware that there were other people in the group. Francis was one who was on a different level of comprehension with John about what was going on, what he was saying. And it's just so fascinating to me that there would be a gulf like that, such a gulf between some profound experience which allowed me to resonate and understanding which would allow me to take it further, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just a story. It's my story.
Well,
you might say.
What matters is that now the fruits, the seeds are blooming, are sprouting. That's what matters. It's not what it was. So there were like seeds that were planted. Now, the fact that you were resonating with John's teaching, although it was at a certain level and you perceived other people like Francis who were also at a different level, the fact that you were resonating with John's teachings means that there was some openness within you. And when there is openness, then there was a receiving. There was a receptivity.
Right.
So this receptivity allowed you to hear the teaching, to receive the teaching. And that teaching, the teaching may take some time to sort of percolate and dissolve the joints, that keep the me structure in place. So now I can see that there is a blooming in your contemplation, your understanding and how you are living and your demeanor. And that's what really matters. So we are grateful, to Jean's teachings.
Yeah.
And different people are different places in their journey. And here, as we gather here, we're a group of friends, and we're all have different questions, different places in our journey. But one thing that really we share in common is our love for the truth. Otherwise, we would just leave. Why would we just stay, in this conversation? There is something that resonates within us, in our heart, that we say yes to. That it is actually a yes, and it is a yes to truth, yes to God, not yes to a person, because it's not about that. It is the teaching, which we recognize within ourselves at some level or the other, that keeps us interested in being around the satsang. So was there more to your question? Am I missing something of your question?
Here's something that just comes up to me, and I started thinking about this when I recently posted I made a little synopsis of some of Jean's an interview, and I was around at the time he had this interview, and at the time he would talk about the objects point back to the self, and I heard that and I said, well, that's got to be true. It makes sense, it totally makes sense. But now it makes much more sense. It's like, what else are they, except pointing back, pointing.
Yes.
And yet somehow I can say that it's not opaque still, as much as it's much clearer than it was. It's still a bit opaque. That this,
yes. Well, if you look in this very moment, there is the reality of perception. There is the reality of the self that perceives.
Right.
There is that is not a form, the formless self.
Right.
And there is this perception. There is the I am. That is the invisible I am, but yet you can sense that this I am is the reality. But it's not a thing. You cannot see it like you perceive these glasses, but it is the self that perceives. It is the I that perceives. You see. Yeah. So that the whatever you're perceiving, it always refers to I am perceiving. I perceive the screen. I perceive the oak tree. I perceive these glasses. I perceive this thought. I perceive the sensation. So there is always the I. The I is always there, even in our conversation. When you say, I am looking at the, at the service, the I is always referenced in when we are. The error in our understanding is to believe that the I is an object, that I is a male or a female form.
Yeah.
But if you look directly right now at what is it that perceives, what is it that hears, you have to take a step away from the perceiving and the hearing to find an ananda, or to find a man, or to find a body, or to find the ears, or to find a head, or to find a nose, or to find a belly. You have to take a conceptual step.
Yeah.
In your direct experience, when you don't take any conceptual step, where you're directly in your experience, it is the formless self, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what is this opacity? Opacity is some sort of measurement. It's we're measuring. How am I doing? Where am I? How was I? How am I now? how is he, what was he, what is she, or he was that. And this is some sort of measurement. And measurement is not a direct being, it's a thinking, yeah?
Right.
So it's a thinking, but it's not thinking. Any thoughts doesn't speak about what I truly am. Doesn't a thought about about me, doing good, not doing good, getting better, getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
These thoughts do not describe in any way, nor can they describe in any way the formless self,
mm-hmm.
the reality of being. The reality of cannot be described via thought, because thought is downstream from reality of being. What is downstream cannot perceive the source. The source perceives, but the thought cannot perceive.
So, among other satsang situations, I was friends with, I at least had the opportunity to meet Douglas Harding and spend some time with him. Do you remember? He's the one with,
yes,
what
yes,
seed? Where are you? And that rang with me from previous experience. And then recently I've been in finding some good company in the DP direct path community, I call it, who go back to Atmananda, John Klein, and Rupert, basically, as the basis of saying that if you can verify everything experientially completely, you don't have to contemplate anything that's and it's basically you too, what you're saying too. You don't have to contemplate some abstract tatvamasi or something, that thou art. You can, but but you can actually go directly to the experience, like you were just pointing me. So,
what is this you? The you. What is this you?
Right. It's a subtle object, I will say. As soon as you ask me, I say,
what is this you? Right now, in this very moment, yes?
Oh.
Or at any moment, what is this you? So to be really watchful, not to substitute the false I for the universal self.
So in these conversations with people who are even Rupert's basic meditations that he guides, on videos, I've watched those. So I found myself saying in conversation, I don't really get anything out of these, looking at something and proving that it's not objective. They have ways of sort of Socratic methods or something to prove to yourself that things are not objective, though there's the process of perceiving and apparent objects. So I said, I find myself saying, I don't get anything out of it because I do the exercise and I'm still right where I am. I'm still the witnessing awareness. It's not like I became more. So it seems like it's really clear at that moment. And then at another time, like now, I can say, as clear as it is, even doing the exercises doesn't seem to clear any more fog. You know what I mean? It's like one more pointer, like, do you realize that you are, so yes, I've been realizing I am for a long time. There's still something about the Maya and the objective world.
Well, the objective of the teaching is not for you to become an eternal student.
No, and I recognize that. That's one thing that's good about it as a teaching. And it's a great, that's a great screening device for teachers. Does somebody have an interest in people being students, and ongoingly so,
Well, that's their business.
Yes, true.
Your business is not to be a student. but your business is to comprehend.
Right.
And you comprehend with what you resonate with. And what you resonate with, if it brings a mental understanding, or if it brings if it adds something rather than liberates or relieves something, then you have a more to manage.
Oh, you mean you're adding to the load?
Yes. Because the self is complete transparency. It's not about accumulating or finding a new method or a new technique or a new. It's not about that. It's just love. It's love. It's love of truth, and love of truth burns. It's like the torch. It burns ignorance. And it's not your love directed outwards. It's not directed towards anything outside of you. It is directed towards the heart, towards God's reality, which I am. So it's the love of the I am, and I am is universal consciousness, universal being.
Yeah.
So we maintain in our thinking the belief that things have to happen to me as a person. And so we have always a personal objective. That sneaks in. It says, okay, well, what am I? How am I doing? What am I getting out of it? What will I get out of it? What is the technique that I need to do in order to get something out of it for myself? These directions are where the false sense of I comes in. And our love for truth becomes a love for the person. Our practice becomes a practice for the person. It has a personal interest.
And that's really the point I was actually trying to get to a little minute ago when I brought this up, was that I had the experience of where Jean is coming from and, you know, what he's saying. At the same time, I had to have a personal interest, you know, and conversations with him would usually end with him saying, just take yourself for nobody. Because I was still taking myself for somebody, at the same time having this deep thing. Amazing.
Yes. There can be some
unquestionable.
There are understandings that don't necessarily completely eliminate the separate me.
Yeah.
You know, we understand something, but there is still a me lurking in the background, you know, that is sort of appropriating these understandings.
Like for example, when you talk about that meditation where the body becomes the universe, you let what's your true body, you know, like is there a contraction? Well, I can see that I'm thinking I'm gonna expand to the universe, or you know what I mean? Instead of being confined, instead of having a confined location, I'm going to have an unbordered location. But it's still the that sense of me is still involved in the
even. You know, the exercises about relaxing into being.
Yes.
Are exercises that are relevant only when you're doing them. They're not about getting something or having that. They're tools. They're
I see.
means to experience a relaxation of being, the relaxation of the contraction into the vastness of being in that very moment. And they have the effect you can leave their, you will not be able to comprehend their effect or measure their effect or evaluate their effect. They don't leave a trace that you can measure.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
But they're essential part of the contemplation, because the contemplation is not strictly at the understanding level, it's also at the being level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's the silent vibration of the self, of being. It's not something that where the mind is still there sort of measuring and moving it in a certain direction and taking a temperature and seeing how am I doing, is the temperature
Mm-hmm.
rising or dropping.
Mm-hmm.
And they're only significant as you do them at that moment. So there is no time in them, there is no future in them. In other words, they're not being done in order to.
Mm-hmm.
They're simply being done to reflect the openness of being, the
Mm-hmm.
borderless presence, the borderless
Mm-hmm.
presence of
Mm-hmm.
consciousness. They're not meant for somebody to practice them and improve their practice by doing them. It's not like that.
No, that's good, because otherwise you sneak that person back in there.
Yes,
and it's just the whole thing is still intact. Yeah.
Yes, and so you don't need to think about these exercises. Just simply do them when you feel like doing them, which is basically just sitting, relaxing, allowing anything that's arising to just be, and noticing that anything that's arising is arising in the borderless presence. There is a borderless presence. And you can expand, your front torso into the space, the back of your head, you open it up into the space. Just allow these sensations to sort of expand in the space. You don't need to comprehend that. Your belly, open your belly, allow your belly to expand, through these walls into the infinite space. You don't need to comprehend anything. It's not at the mind level, it's at the body level. It's the subtle contractions, the subtle vibrations. Just sort of allow them to float in the space. Even the language is not correct. They're already. Just notice the vastness of being. And release, relax everything that's arising into this vastness. Anyways, these exercises, we can really only go through them in the retreats. Just sort of speaking.
I get what you're saying, and I see that what I tend to do is try to translate the experience of that kind of meditation into non-duality concepts.
Yeah, don't think about them. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't think about them.
No. Yes. I get it. Well,
don't try to comprehend them, Ananda. Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Rhonda. Okay, Ananda. See you in a minute. Rhonda, you're right. Is space a thought, a concept? Rhonda, the space that we refer to in the teaching is not being referred to as a concept, because the teaching is not about introducing concepts. There are already enough of them. But use the term space because space is a term that approximates, in our language, it approximates this borderless presence, borderless beingness. So no, space is not a concept. You could say that it's an infinite beingness. It's peace. Peace is spaciousness. When you're spacious, in your relationship with people, when you're spacious in the way you move, in the way you live, in the way things happen to you. You're just spacious. Everything is just allowed, is sort of naturally, effortlessly allowed to be in this space. It's not a physical space that you can measure in miles or light years or anything like that. It's just the spaciousness of being. So when we speak of space, we're speaking about the experience of consciousness, space-like. Not like these glasses they're not space-like, but the perception of these glasses is arising in a spacious awareness. Yes, you see what I mean? It's not an object, no. Not an object and not a thought, Ananda, no. Randa, no. Space is not referred to as an object, and nor as a thought. It is referred to allude to the formless reality of consciousness. You also use the term infinite, or we use the term transparent, or we use the term borderless. So nothingness. Randa, you ask nothingness. So is space like nothingness? I don't use the term nothingness, but yes, it is used in some teachings. I use the term nothingness if I ever use it as everythingness. So there is a nothingness that is everythingness. So it's a no thing. Consciousness is not a thing. For example, an oak tree, we could say, is a thing. For example, we say, okay, let's call that a thing. We're going to call it an oak tree. In our experience with the mind, we dissect different forms and we label them. It's just for communication purposes. So we say this is a tree, this is a dresser, this is a chair, etc. Now, our experience, our pure experience, is not mental. It's experience of consciousness. We're always experiencing consciousness. And consciousness is not divided in things. The mind labels things and divides things and calls things, creates things conceptually, mentally. But in our experience, it is always consciousness. We never experience anything else but consciousness. This is what you need to come to understand, that you're never experiencing anything. You're always experiencing consciousness. You're always experiencing the wholeness of being. Now, whenever you separate yourself, meaning whenever you refer to yourself as a woman, as a person, as a human being, you have separated yourself. And when you refer to yourself as a human being, you separate yourself from the wholeness, you separate yourself from God, and you separate yourself from the everythingness, from the wholeness, and you become a thing. And when you become a thing, meaning a personal mind, you are perceiving external forms, external objects. You follow? God is not divided in any things, in any parts. It is the wholeness. It is the infinite, invisible reality of the self. The mind, meaning the personal impression, separates me from God. It says, well, okay, God, I believe you. I know you are there. What can you do for me? Can you give me a better job? Can you give me a better house? Can you give me a better relationship? That's when there is multiplicity. The dual reality arises. God's reality and the personal reality. And of course, then there is a reality of the tree, of the money, the account in my bank, and all of these things. Zoe, you had written a comment. Let me see if this time I can copy it. And whoops. Okay. All right. Let's see. Somehow, for some reason, I'm having a little difficulty with this. Okay, let me try. No. Oh, okay. I know what I'm going to do. So do it this way. Okay, maybe this is better. Okay. So, okay. So Zoe, you write, let me see. Okay, thank you, Magdi. For some reason, I could not unmute. Your answers touch me to the core. I used to think that I wanted or needed to move from where I am currently living. But I am experiencing the self within more, and now that need to move seems to have dropped. And instead of feeling bound and stuck in this place that I live, I feel sort of untethered, no drive to go or to stay. It feels much softer. Where could I possibly go that the self is not or is more? Yes, that's very, very, very lovely, Zoe. It reminds me of years ago when I was living in New York. I had this idea that, oh, okay, I have to go live in the Zen center. I wanted to go live in a different place. I felt that was the holy place. That's the place where I need to go, blah, blah. And somehow life just kept me with responsibilities and different activities around where I was, and I never moved where I thought was the great place for me to be. But I realized, it sort of came slowly in a way, that where I was just where I needed to be. I was always in the right place. I was in the right place because I was in contemplation. No matter how many activities I've always been very busy in my life, doing business and taking care of kids and family, etc., work and etc. But always my heart was in the right place, was always loving and contemplating truth. I had a glimpse of the self, and I could not compromise that glimpse for a place or for money or for a relationship or anything like that. Although I was very involved in life, I was always, my heart and my mind were always set on the contemplation of truth. And I realized that I was always in the right place. So the right place is whenever you are loving God and you are contemplating truth, you are in the right place. There were two questions way back. Okay. I'm going to, just for a minute, go to the questions that were asked. One of them was sent to me via email. Where is it? I just had it here a minute ago. Okay, that was from Raul. He wrote, I would like to hear you talking about hiding or camouflaging behind the non-dual principles. Is this the timeless being caught in time? Thank you for the support. So, Raul, the timeless is never caught in time. What hides behind non-dual concepts It's always the person. It's always the body-mind, the human that is still believing that my reality is a human reality and not God's reality. It is that is hiding behind principles, that is holding on to principles, that is holding on to beliefs, that is parading non-duality, beautiful non-duality slogans. And it is not the timeless that is hiding behind the impression of time. The timeless is the eternity of God, the eternal God, the eternal reality of the self. And that is always shining brightly. There was also a question from somebody else via message. The question was, what do you think of Vipassana practices? Doesn't direct recognition need a certain preparation? Okay. Vipassana practices and all sorts of practices that refer to being more aware or being more in the now or being more present are relative practices. There are practices that relate to the person, they relate to the mind, they can make you more sensitive, more aware of your environment, more aware of your own thoughts, of your own emotions, of your own trickeries and so on. But they don't refer to the reality of consciousness. Are they a necessary preparation? If you feel so, then they are a necessary preparation, I guess, for you if you find yourself drawn to them. If you find yourself drawn to this teaching, then you're not finding yourself drawn to Vipassana. But if you are drawn to Vipassana teachings, then that's where you will find yourself to be. The question is it essential or necessary for one to prepare oneself for the direct understanding? The direct understanding, is fueled by love for truth, love for God. That is the only ingredient. That is the only thing that you need to take care of to maintain, is your love for truth. This love for truth will not arise for you because you are doing Vipassana. Your love for truth will arise for you out of grace. Grace will touch your heart, will come to you, and will touch you, will awaken you, will nudge you out of your sleep. And if you go back to sleep, then you're not honoring the nudge. You just need to recognize what has resonated for you, which is a direct pointing to the formless self. And you can contemplate the formless self as you are the formless self. You don't need to go anywhere or do any practice to contemplate the formless self. Your greatest fortune would be to recognize that presence, the formless presence, and to meet a friend or friends who honor this recognition and who celebrate this recognition and who contemplate this recognition. Thank you for your question. Okay. Is there any question from anybody? Okay, Ananda. Emmanuel, thank you, Ananda. I'm glad that you are here. Hola, Emmanuel. Emmanuel, you're right. You have said that one part of the contemplation consists in being still, irrespective of what arises. However, I get lost very easily in the world business, money, work, relations, and in the ego stuff, mental stories, memories, future projections, and all the emotions and sensations that come with it. Isn't it easy to me not to get involved? It's not easy for me to not to get involved in all this bunch of distraction. Can you say something about it? Emmanuel, it will become easier and easier as you continue to continue in your contemplation. It is not easy to start with, it's just the impression, but the good news is that it will become easier and easier as you continue to contemplate the teaching, as you continue to reflect about what is being shared with you. The sharing is very simple, Emmanuel. You are the freedom of being. You are that formless self, the effortless, aware presence. You are not anything that is perceived. You are not any bunch of thoughts that you perceive. You are not any sensations, stories that you perceive, because the sensations, you perceive them. You are not the body that you perceive, because you perceive the body. You are beyond that. You are not that. You are not that form. You are not the dreams that you perceive. The night dreams. You may in the night dream become an eagle, a huge vulture, but you are not the vulture that you perceive or that you feel that you are. You may in your night's dream become a giant, but you are not a giant, the giant that you perceive in your night dreams. Your waking dream is similarly. You perceive in your waking dream body, sensations, perceptions. You are that is beyond all of that. You are not defined by anything that you perceive. Nothing defines the reality of consciousness. You are that. As long as you confuse yourself to be a body-mind, that needing this and seeking that, and I would be better with more money, I would be better if my business does good, I would be better if my relationship is good. As long as you believe that, you are bound to suffer, because you have given the reality to the body-mind. You have given the reality away from truth, away from God, away from the reality that you are. There is no way around it, Emmanuel. As long as you continue to cherish the mortal and the impermanent, you are bound to leave the casino empty-handed. You will not win. You will not find happiness in attaching yourself and valuing and cherishing experiences, situations, feelings. The teaching is about recognition of what I truly am. That I am God's consciousness. I am the light of being. I am the universal self. There is no problem with what I perceive. Who cares? Nothing that I perceive affects me, defines me, limits me, reduces me, describes me. In your night dream, if you dream of a dragon that is burning the whole village with spitting fire, it doesn't define you, it doesn't affect you, it is dreaming that you are a mortal body-mind. And not waking up from this dream, because at night, after a few hours, we get out of bed and we recognize, oh, I dreamt I was a dragon, ha 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 ha. But when we dream, we are the mortal body-mind. And we stay in that dream, we stay in the dream. We stay in the dream, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? Oh, now I am 32. Oh my God, now I'm 33. Oh, my knee is hurting me. Oh, my girlfriend left me. Oh, I won at the casino. Great, I'm happy. Oh, I lost, somebody robbed me. Oh, you know, got a great job, I'm happy. Oh, I lost my job, I'm miserable. You're still referring to yourself as a mortal body mind. You're a beggar. You're living saying, what can I get? What can I get? What can I get? And every day, the body mind is getting older and older, and you're becoming lesser and lesser. The mind is becoming less and less capable. The body is becoming more and more achy. The possibilities are becoming less and less, and you feel more and more miserable. Human beings, as they age, they become more and more miserable. The sage, as the body ages, becomes more and more happy. Because you're celebrating the freedom. And soon enough, this limited body mind will go poof, and then freedom of the self. The body is such a pain in the butt, if you really think about it. You have to feed it, you have to wash it, you have to put it to bed, you have to give it companionship, and the right companionship, the wrong companionship. Oh my God. Yes? So, Emmanuel, the contemplation is a contemplation of the source. It's not downstream, it's going upstream. Not downstream. Me, what's happening to me, what happened to me, no. It's going up to the source. The source is consciousness. Consciousness, I mean, the reality that perceives, the divine reality of the self, God's reality, what truly perceives right now. The formless presence. If you try to reach for your nose, here is your nose. If you try to reach for your eye, here is your eye. If you try to reach for your ear, here is your ear. If you try to reach for your hair, here is your hair. But if you try to reach for the self, for me, for I, where do you reach? But you cannot deny your nose. Here's the feeling of the nose. You cannot deny the self. You cannot deny I. But where do you reach for I? You cannot reach for I with the human body mind. You can only reach for I with God, because I is God. I is pure consciousness. Pure consciousness knows itself. I know I am. I know I am is God knowing God's reality, God's truth. I know I am. I, God, know myself as God, as the one reality. I am. When you reach for the I am, you find no place where you are not. The body may be in this room, but the I is not in this room. The body is in this room. The Emmanuel body is in this room. The Magdi body is in this room. But the I is not in any room. It's not an object. You could say that this perception appears in I. I perceive this perception, so therefore the perception appears in I. It doesn't appear in the body, it doesn't appear inside the head, or it doesn't appear in your belly, it doesn't appear in the throat. It appears in I. I perceive, I. It doesn't appear in the nose, it doesn't appear in the right eye or the left eye or in the forehead or in the ear. The perception appears in I. I, meaning I, God's consciousness. I, the self, I, aware presence, I, beingness. Yes, yes, Ananda. Ananda writes, the fact of the self being not an object is inherently delightful. Yes. So the teaching is about recognizing yourself, knowing yourself. There is no other knowingness. There is nothing else you need to know but knowing oneself. Okay, well, thank you all very much for your lovely company. We'll be away for a couple of weeks, but it's very lovely to see you, Holly, Ananda, Rhonda, Richard, Zoe, everybody. Blessings, and we'll see you soon. Okay, bye. See you. Okay. Okay, Emmanuel.